Many physicians know about direct primary care and concierge primary care on a surface level, but what about when you go under the hood? How do they work? Which model's better for you? My guest today helps his clients sort these questions out, and he's going to give us his insights today. I'm Carl White, principal at Mark Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency, and I'm also the host of Practice Care. The mission for both is the same, and that's to help private practice owners stay private. It's usually what they want, but care is better when it's the provider of care who owns the practice or providers, because all the decisions that have to get made, whether it's taking care of patients, business decisions, whatever they may be, are made by the people who have to turn right around and take care of patients. So we can feel very confident that the needs of patients and patient care will always stay front of mind. My guest today is Bob Whittemore. Bob is a consultant in the healthcare services group with WebsterRodgers, which is based in South Carolina. Bob has over three decades of experience, both as a senior executive at large physician practices and as a commercial lender at some of the country's biggest banks. Bob brings practical and insightful understanding of the regulatory, financial, and operational pressures that healthcare entities encounter. In his consulting role, Bob advises physicians and their practices in the areas of operational and financial improvement, compensation, and overall practice optimization. Bob, you're a new addition to Practice Care. Thanks for coming on.
Carl, I'm delighted to be a part of this podcast and delighted to join you this afternoon.
Yeah, and this is going to be a fun topic. I think more and more people have heard of them. That's kind of obvious to say. We had one episode early on in Practice Care's existence. It's from a current client who happens to be a DPC, direct primary care doctor. But between then and today, nothing. So this is well timed. So for those who are regular listeners or casual listeners, you know where I'm going to start. That was a short bio about you, but that's what I asked for. So tell us more about you, about the healthcare services group. Help us get to know you a bit.
Sure, I appreciate that, Carl. And just to give the audience a little bit of a background on myself, I was a former commercial banker for many, many years at some of the largest financial institutions, Bank of America, a predecessor bank to now JP Morgan Chase.
Yeah, a
And
lot of banks can say that.
a lot of banks, yeah, they did merge, and
Yeah.
I was actually a part of one of their early mergers with Chemical Bank and
Oh,
Manufacturers
yeah.
Hanover Trust
Yeah.
way back when in the '90s. So that was before the Chase merger. So yes, so I went through a lot of bank transitions, and so I was a banker for many years, and then the financial meltdown occurred in the sort of 2006 to 2008 area, and at that point, I felt like I needed to do a real pivot in my career. So I quickly latched on to a few doctors who were friends, and they needed some help on doing some financial backgrounds from some financial spreadsheet analysis. And lo and behold, I started working with a few of them, and then I got a call from actually a CPA firm, not the one I'm working for now,
Okay.
that needed a full-time administrator for a vascular practice in South Carolina. So I said, gee, I don't know much about it, but I said, why not? So I joined that practice as a practice administrator, executive director. And the first day, I can tell you, the first day I got a knock on the door, and someone said, we are here to talk about electronic medical records. And I had absolutely no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And
Did, did,
so I
did you
got
fake it well?
I did fake it well,
Okay.
and it turned out to be sort of a baptism by fire. So, to give a long story, I was at that practice for about 9 years, and then did a little journey up to Virginia for a pulmonary practice, and then I came back to South Carolina looking for a new opportunity and. Joined WebsterRodgers, which is a full service CPA firm slash consulting firm, and they started back in the mid 80s working with independent physicians really on the both on the tax and accounting side. So
Hmm.
they have a very large focus in healthcare, and so I've been with WebsterRodgers now for 5.5 years, and we do a full range of consulting work both for our tax and accounting clients, and then some often many clients are not tax or accounting clients, and we just do one-off consulting projects.
Right.
So
And
that's
you
a little
are
background of me.
not on the accounting side, right?
I'm not on the accounting side. I'm not a CPA, but I do have a master's in healthcare administration, which I obtained about 10 years ago. So
Yeah. So I'm curious. So you go from banking to the world of healthcare, healthcare administration, operate. What keeps you here?
Well, there's so much going on in healthcare, and really, practices that want to remain independent, or some physicians that may have joined a healthcare system that really want to think about, maybe rejoining the independence movement, and there's so many. Each day is a little bit different,
Hmm.
and each day I might be working on a payer contract. I may be working on sort of a backroom office issue that someone might have, and then often it all goes back to the financials and the stability of the practice and the growth of the practice. So that's what really keeps me going. Just sort of looking at the finances of these practices, and just trying to steer them in the right direction, or help them sort of figure out the best alternative to go forward.
Yeah. And, it's I remember this from my time in corporate. It's hard to you have to spend time on the finances. You really have no choice. It's hard to strike the balance between making sure the finances are healthy, but then not making that the mission of the whole thing. And because you spend so much time on it, and it's just I don't know if you find that. Do you find that with your, they just get frustrated by it, or they're like, do we have to, you know what I mean?
Yes, I mean, and so often, the physicians, on one hand they want to sort of take care of patients, but the other hand they're running a business, and
Hmm.
many times they just don't have really the time, or the patients, not the patient as in a human person, but just in they're all just the time and effort to
Yeah,
look at the finances and sort of see what works and what doesn't work, and so often, the physicians really just want to make sure that they are moving forward, and they're also having a good livelihood as well.
sure, 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 sure. Okay, so let's thank you for all that. Let's get into it. So direct primary care versus concierge primary care. When you and I were talking about a topic, this is when you threw out like instantly. So can I draw the obvious conclusion that you're seeing more and more sort of client work, client questions around these?
Yes, Carl. I mean, it's really sort of a hot topic right now, and
Yeah.
it's one that has seen significant growth
Hmm.
throughout the country. And there are similarities between the two, and
Hmm.
there's obviously vast
Right.
differences between the two.
Yeah.
And there's really no size fits all, but a lot of the physicians that want to sort of get away from the sort of the corporate world, so to speak, and sort of really have more time to on patient care, and really sort of treat the patient as a real human being, and really sort of work through any issues that he or she may have.
Hmm.
This is an alternative. And again, for those who do not really know the difference, the direct primary care is basically it's a membership fee, and you pay a monthly fee, somewhere between $50 to maybe $150, and there's no insurance billing. So for a direct primary care, you really eliminate the insurance headache
Hmm.
for both the patient and the practice. And that's a huge, huge component of it all, because for the practice, they don't have that administrative, overhang of trying to file, for this diagnosis or that diagnosis, or treatment plan or that treatment plan. They can just treat the patient, and have the ability to sort of, spend more time with the patient.
Hmm.
And on the concierge side, it's a little bit different, because that one is really sort of more. There's a retainer, and that could be either a monthly or an annual retainer. But there is you do have the patients do file, or the practice does file for insurance after that. So on one hand, the DPC side, there's no insurance involved. On the other side, the concierge model, it does have the insurance component. Um, the other difference is that really the direct primary care is probably more of a suburban, more of a, you know, dealing with the patients that really might have some affordability issues. And we can talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
And whereas the concierge model is more for people that might be on the higher income side, and really wants the ability to have full access to not only their primary care physician, but also the specialists. And the concierge doctors often have, great relationships with the specialists. And nowadays, some of the concierge medicine is, have the same components for whether it's a cardiologist or someone on the dermatology side or whatever. So it's really branched out into not only primary care, but also into the specialty care
You do
side.
hear it. I heard somebody 6 or 7 months ago say, I'm thinking about concierge pediatric care. And I just thought, I don't know, I don't have a hard time getting into my, go explore it. But yeah, like, so they're both sort of membership based. You pay a monthly fee. This is my understanding. Concierge includes billing your insurance. DPC does not. Um, they're both primary care. It's interesting. I mean, here's a difference that I've seen. I want to ask you about this. I don't know why, but DPC practices tend to charge a lower membership fee than concierge practices, and I don't understand why. And my first exposure to DPC really was my own client, and she went from traditional to concierge to DPC. And the reason she switched from concierge to DPC is she was just so sick of insurance companies. She's like, get out. But she didn't change her monthly subscription fee. It stayed the same. And I thought, well, that makes sense. It's the same great primary care. I mean, why should insurance, if anything, insurance frees the doctor to do more what they want, and what they think is right rather than any sort of learning insurance rules. But when I sort of spot check around the country in different areas, I see DPC membership fees lower. I'm sure there are exceptions. I'm just wondering, do you see this? Why do you think that is? I always wonder, like, why are you people doing this? Why do you, what is that? What's driving that?
Well, I mean, there's really sort of a couple of components to that. One is for the direct primary care. Again, you're not filing insurance, and
Right?
so there's no back office overhead. So that's
Mhm.
why it's lower from that perspective. On the flip side, on the concierge side, it's higher because you do have that that back room office that does have to file insurance, and also the ability for the physician there to be able to sort of tap into his resources that may be, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, the specialty resources, whereas the direct primary care may not have all those resources. And so the concierge, they also have a smaller panel size. I mean, it's
I think
not
they do because the fee is higher. I think they can. Like that's the
the
math,
fee is
right?
higher,
So,
and
but if
that's correct. It's
yeah,
math.
but if the fee were the same, I think I thought of it as so if I pay $100 a month to a DPC doctor and then $200 a month to a concierge doctor, does that mean that the DPC doctor's quality of primary care is going to be less? It shouldn't be. And I doubt that the doctor would agree, even if they're like in the same area. And I'm just like, I don't know why you guys do that. I don't know.
Yeah,
But I get
that
how it's evolved and sort of grown up over time. I just stare at it and I go, I don't think you need to do that. But
right.
one guy's opinion.
Yeah, and it's really sort of also, I mean, the concierge doctors tend to be more of a urban. I mean, they tend to be in the bigger cities where there's it's really sort of a supply and demand
Yeah, maybe,
perspective.
maybe.
And they're in the big cities where I mean, I read somewhere that the 22% of the top 1% income earners have some sort of concierge medicine
Yeah.
relationship.
Oh,
So,
well, I
so
totally believe
that's,
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
they have the money to pay for the best service that they can get, and so that's why there's they can charge more.
Hmm.
I mean, there's some concierge doctors in L.A. and other big cities that charge $40,000 a year.
It's I mean, if you can get it, that sounds gross, and I don't mean it to, but come
Yeah,
on. I mean, there's a market force there. There's a market need, and yeah, like you
and
could be
if you
super
sort of
concierge, like
Yeah, if you sort of peel back and as we were just talking about the math, I mean that panel size probably for that doctor that charges 40,000, it's
100. Yeah.
a
I
hundred.
mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
yeah,
House calls person that's like, Marcus will be modernized. I mean,
right,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So those are the big similarities and differences. Any others that, sort of big ones that kind of jump out at you before we move on?
Well, again, I was talking about affordability, and I think one of the items that, you're really sort of talking about. Direct primary care has really gotten into the employer side,
Hmm.
um,
They're
and
trying. Yeah.
they're trying. And so that, so what that means is that there's going to be employers and DPCs matched up together. And there
Yeah.
are, I mean, there's, we can talk about this in a minute. Private equity, is involved, and there's even some MSO relationships that sort of the matchmakers between,
Hmm.
direct primary care people and,
Hmm.
um, you know, you know, ultra, sort of private equity or sort of the corporatization of DPC.
Hmm.
But one of the beauty things is on a DPC is that it does have a monthly fee, and so the monthly fee can be either paid by the individual or it can be paid by the employer. And there are some tax laws. The one beautiful bill does allow the ability to tap into the health savings accounts to pay
Hmm.
for those fees if there's a high deductible plan sort of backstopping it
Yeah.
or repair in the way background. And so, what that means is that these patients that go to that have a direct primary care relationship, they probably will be, they're healthy. They probably have better access to care at probably a more affordable level. And one of the key things about direct primary care is that there is a chronic management component to it.
Hmm.
In other
Hmm.
words, people that might have diabetes or hypertension, they can get treated on a more regular basis.
Yeah.
And so, they feel like they don't have to pay. There's no copay or co-insurance. They know they know the costs of care,
Yeah.
and that sort of is a key component of direct primary care.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sort of a blue collar version of
It's the way it's evolved. It's true. It's
yeah,
true. That's
and
not a bad, yeah.
that's probably not necessarily the best term to put it, but I mean it's more available to
Just because the
people.
pro, yeah. I mean, if I were to ever have a client who was starting up, I would talk to them seriously about pricing, and they can price where they want. But I would say, look, don't just necessarily default to being lower than what you think concierge is simply because your direct primary care. You can always end up there. But on the employer side, there was a really good study that came out a few years ago by Millman. They're an actuarial firm, and they looked at the impact of DPC in the in the workforce, and they looked at some employers and tracked a cohort that was just kind of going about their merry way, and the other cohort that had was on DPC. And not surprisingly, the patients, the employees were happier, they were healthier, and the employer spent a lot less money than I forget if the other arm they were on traditional insurance or no insurance. I forget, but whatever it was, um, they spent a lot less money um, because the patients were better cared for. And it's very obvious when you say it out loud, but it was nice to see some data back it up.
Yeah, I mean, you can think of about a patient who might have traditional insurance, and they say, do I go to the emergency room?
Right.
And they, they're whatever their issue may be, it may be, treated, at the emergency room or not. So
Hmm.
me, but now if they're a DPC member, they can just call their doctor and just say,
Hmm.
hey, I have this issue. What should I do?
And see them same day, next day in most
See
cases. Like
see them.
when the
That's
problem is
correct.
still there.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
So,
so let's move a bit to like starting one. So, you know, the sort of broad question is what upsides do you see and what headaches do you see for each model, DPC and concierge, that physicians, in your experience, they don't realize until they've already started. The doors are open, and then bammo, they get hit with something, or wow, this is better than I thought. Like what's your experience show you?
yeah, let's step back for a second, Carl, and let's think about why they would even want to leave whatever
Okay.
arrangement they have.
Hmm.
And a lot of it's just administrative burnout,
Hmm.
or just not the ability to sort of see a patient long enough. They're just trying to, the typical primary care panel size is, 2,000, maybe up to 3,000 patients.
Hmm.
And so you only get to see a patient maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes,
Maybe. Yeah.
maybe. maybe.
Hmm.
And so, so the physicians will think, well, gee, life is probably better if I can treat a patient longer than 10 to 15 minutes.
Hmm.
And I don't have to be, burdened with all this paperwork, particularly on the DPC side, with filing insurance, dealing with insurance companies. Am I getting paid properly?
Right.
Et cetera, et cetera. Um, so, so therefore, it's a logical step for them to consider a DPC. I mean,
Hmm.
we're going to talk about concierge medicine in a moment, but so you have to sort of think about, okay, what are the economics? We're talking about math and just saying, okay, if I'm going to charge $50 a month per patient, how many patients do I need to have, to make a livelihood that's maybe not initially on the same level that I was doing or I am doing, but how do I get there?
Yeah.
So you just have to sort of there's some marketing involved. There's as any new business, and just a lot of it's relationship building. And so
Hmm.
you need to build relationships both within the community as well as with other specialists that or
Hmm.
just word of mouth, just saying, okay, this primary care physician is going to start a direct, a DPC, and so therefore he's going to need the patients to justify, the ability to do this. So
Hmm.
um, I think initially it's probably going to be the physician's probably going to take an economic hit for, I would say, probably the first year, maybe even 2 years,
Okay.
but his or her life should be so much better. The work balance life, the ability to sort of really see a patient for maybe up to 30, 40 plus minutes, and think that's important for doctors. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what they were trained to do.
Yeah.
So I think, again, if you ask me what the hardest thing would be, it's just being able to sort of figure out how you're going to build that patient panel size.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and going from 2,000 to maybe 2,500, you probably need, at least 3 to 400. Um, I think, that's probably a good panel, and that's going to take time,
Yeah.
so just, you got to have the ability to make the proper relationship building.
Yeah.
So
The successful transitions I've seen are those who try to, downsize from traditional. So they open up very close to where their office is. They deal with the non-competes and the non-solicits, but they make their patients aware. And, if they can get 100 and 150 patients to follow them, like there's your floor.
right.
I hear every once in a while of a story of, I'm starting from zero. I'm going to open this thing and I'm like, gotta love the mission. Oof, just your runway's longer. I mean, you should, if it's not, good for you, but you should plan on your runway being longer. Um, you know,
There's a trade-off with everything, every
yeah,
change in life, and so I mean, there's definitely a trade-off. I mean, in the sense that you're going to have a better work-life balance, but it's going to be a little bit of a financial hit initially. So
yeah, yeah.
so on the concierge side, I mean, really to build that, you really sort of you got to be probably pretty well known, I would think,
Mhm.
in whatever community you're working with. And again, it's not too different from what we were just talking about, the DPC side. It's all about relationships, and it's about the ability to sort of, move a lot of those high net worth patients that you have over
Mhm.
to your new practice, and just really, I would think that, on that side, you really sort of have to have a nice office, because you're going to be charging or asking your patients to pay a retainer. And you're going to have, I would say, a very consumer oriented staff. Um,
Mhm.
and your front desk staff, or you're almost like a patient coordinator that will sort of move the patients
Right, right.
to you as fast as possible. And
Mhm.
those people are the really good ones. Probably are not that they're going to be expensive. I mean,
Yeah.
they're because they're going to be probably well educated. They're going to be probably very personable. So you're going to need those people. And then there's insurance. So you're going to have to get people to file your insurance or figure out how you get your
Credentialing. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a few more components of that on the concierge side, but the base the base concept is that you got to have the following to be able to justify it.
Yeah. Yeah, which would seem to be, I would think both, but I take your point. It's, so the upside's quality of life. Yes. There was another study that was done sometime shortly after, maybe before COVID, I don't know. And it said, how many hours a day does a traditional primary care physician need to work to keep up with everything? And the answer was 25.7 hours a day. So no sleep, just between patients, admin, all of it, 25.7 hours. So it's not surprising. Um, but then the reason why it's growing is that there's, the patient side sucks too. I mean, you got to wait 3, 4 weeks for 5 minutes. Well, how is that satisfying to anybody? There's a real market need there. And every year, as the traditional insurance system just feels like it's just getting stretched a bit more. DPC is growing, concierge is growing. Well, a few more people every year are saying, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, this is terrible. I want better care. And so you definitely see it. But what are some of the, as you're working with them? So we've got the upsides, the reasons to consider it. But now they've opened up, or shortly after opening, or it's in the early stages. Just some watch outs, things that it's hard to predict until you're in it that you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, on the DPC side, I think it's just some, um, you got to schedule it correctly. I mean, and it's a little
Mhm.
dependent on what your panel size is, but I mean, you have to sort of, you're used to if you're coming from a traditional, practice background, you're used to seeing 20 patients a day, um, and now you're only seeing, maybe one
Eight.
third of that, eight,
Yeah,
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 yeah.
eight. So the physician, the clinician, will have to, say, okay, I'm doing this for a reason. I'm moving into this so I can spend more time with my patients. So you probably need to, I would think, from a clinician point of view, do some homework up front on each patient.
Yeah.
Particularly early on, to make sure that you can justify the 30 to 45 minute meeting with that patient.
Hmm.
And I just if you're seeing again 2,500 patients, versus now you're down to, 300 to 400 patients. Um, you're just the thought process of
Yeah.
patient care
You
will
don't
be
have to be
different.
as efficient.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then, I just think, again, we talked about marketing as a startup. I mean, you do always have to be sort of out there doing some, business development. Now, business development for a physician may be, sort of being able to sort of, write articles or, go on, to areas where, there's an opportunity to speak, or do podcasts,
Mhm.
just sort of promote yourself. And, sometimes physicians think they're good promoters, but maybe they're not the best promoters. So, or that's sort of a new thing they have to learn.
Yeah.
Uh,
I wish they would just think about it earlier than they tend to. But
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Um,
So keep going. Yeah. What else do you see?
yeah. And so on the concierge side, some of the same things. I mean, I think, you know, there you really sort of need to make sure you have the full array of specialists that you have good relationships with, because that's why someone's going to pay that hefty retainer fee, because they're going to not only want to have access to you, the physician, the primary care physician, at a moment's notice, but also for you to be able to sort of, call in the cardiologist or whatever the specialist may be on a moment's notice and make sure you get your patients to see them just as soon as your patient got to see you, the primary care physician. So
Mm,
a lot of that sort of I would call external, networking, and many of the physicians probably already have, but you know, cardiologist, is going to be busy, and so
hmm.
you have to make sure that you, the primary care physician, has a good enough relationship with your friendly cardiologist that you can get your patients to see them
Mm,
really either the same day or the next day.
yeah.
So
That would be a
and then
feat. That would be
that
worth a
would
few
be
extra
a fee,
bucks.
yeah, yeah,
If you are a patient with, who's got chronic heart problems or whatever, then yeah, I could see that.
yeah. So And then, the other thing is, if you're starting off on your own, on the concierge side, I mean, again, you're going to have the, to file insurance. So
Hmm.
you're going to have to make sure that you understand all the ins and outs of that.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, that still remains.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you've been doing that and you're downsizing, then it's great. It's familiar, so at least to a point.
Right.
Right. What do you think that keys to success to opening up? What do you think like the must have? I mean, I've got one or two thoughts, but I want you to go first. And then big things just to make sure you avoid or don't do.
Um, I think the keys to success would be, again, I talked about just being able to sell yourself as a physician to,
Hmm.
both the patient panel size out there, and also, to other specialists if you're on the, really on both sides. Just be able to, be proactive in your ability to differentiate yourself. I mean, it's nothing different from any of us what we do on a day-to-day basis in
Hmm.
whatever livelihood we're in, but you just got to be able to differentiate yourself. And particularly on the concierge side, I mean, because um, there's probably in the big cities, there's probably many of them, although you keep hearing that they're getting filled up quickly too because they
Words
have
out. Yeah.
it works out.
Yeah.
Their limitations are so many patients. Um, so I mean, it's going to be probably a tough going at first, like any new business. Um, so you're just going to have to be able to realize that it takes time.
Hmm.
And for some people, it might take just a couple of weeks. Other people, it might take, a year and a half or so.
Hmm.
Just you have to have a business plan. I think that's probably what I would recommend for whatever you do. You have to have a business plan and figure out your strengths, you do the standard SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats, and just say, okay, this is something I can do, I want to do. It's going to give me a better work-life balance. I want to get away from on the DPC side, get away from the administrative burden.
Hmm.
I want to be able to have offer more time with my patients. You just have to put together a plan and stick by it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that's sort of standard for any new business.
Yes,
Um,
and as you're writing your business plan, when you get to the marketing plan section, it needs to be, I'm going to say, quite thorough. I mean, keep in mind if you're a doctor, primary care doctor today, that 3,000 patients, you're taking insurance. Now you're going to ask patients to pay out of pocket. And even though we do that at the grocery store every day, we don't do this for healthcare. And so you really need to have, first of all, I would say if you're going to open up, if you're already in an area like Bob's talking about where the sort of the incomes and the economics of the area can support either one of them, then and one more than the other, then think about that. But the easiest way to get started, relatively speaking, is if some of your patients follow you. Some of your, 2 or 3,000 patients follow you. So if you're in an area that can already sustain it, then that's a good first step. But you're probably going to have to get more. And so you need to understand these things. You just do. You can't just say, it's not enough to say, I'll do this because people hate traditional doctors. Yeah, they do. All right. But there's a certain amount of pain that people are willing to tolerate. And even though they hate their traditional primary care doctor, it doesn't automatically mean, therefore, I'm going to switch to you the moment I can. Those are two separate thoughts. And they don't always one doesn't always follow the other. You got to understand your local market. It's more than, even before you say, how am I going to be different than the concierge that's 3 blocks away? Is there enough market here, as far as I can tell, to support another one? Or is DPC, you know what I mean? Like you've really got to be skeptical about it. Be skeptical and try to disprove it until you can. I think about so the area matters a lot. I think about one woman I spoke with a few years ago. She was a traditional care in one part of the metro area, I forget which, and she was going to open up 20 miles away to a different one because where she was couldn't support it, but where she wanted to open was. And I just said, look, and she wanted help with marketing. I said, I got to tell you, I don't think we're the right ones for you in your time frame. And there's all sorts of problems with her operational math, but I just thought, nobody knows you over there. And your numbers don't support how long it's going to take. So be realistic about how long it's going to take to grow and be really scrutinous about, you know, the area in which you're going to choose. And don't presume that people who are angry about the current state are going to automatically switch to a better one when it's available. It's painful how long people will stay in pain, but they do. And it matters to your growth.
Right. And I would say one other topic, or well, two other things that we haven't really talked about
Yeah.
on the DPC side when you look at your market. Don't forget the urgent care centers, because
Keep going. What do you mean?
because the urgent care centers will be a
Oh,
threat to
yeah.
you,
Yeah.
because they, a lot of these patients would go to them, and so that might take away some of your market share.
Yeah,
So,
you're right.
so just be wary of, if there's a surplus of urgent care centers that have opened or are opening up nearby, that's going to be something that needs to be considered.
That's right. That's excellent insight. They are
Uh,
competition, although they don't seem so on the surface.
and
Yes.
the other thing is, we haven't talked about going, it's still on the DPC side, is that, um, you know, you, the physician, or, if you have an office manager, reach out to the employer, see what they're
Hmm.
doing on the, do they have a DPC plan?
Hmm.
And there are groups out there,
Hmm.
um, you know, MSO and other type groups that will match, employers that have direct primary care plans or
Hmm.
benefit opportunities with, primary care doctors that are starting out in DPC
Yeah.
uh, basis.
Yeah.
So, and they're national, and there's some regional groups that will help, there too as well. So that's another
Interesting,
consideration.
because it's hard to find good people. It's hard to keep them. So let's imagine, like a simple example, you're an employer that doesn't offer health insurance. If you could offer this, it's not health insurance, right? But nevertheless, it's really good primary care, and if you were paying for it or whatever, I don't know, to the point where you're a good employee, said, I think I'm going to stay because I don't want to give this up if I leave. You've got a leg up. So very good point. Um, we have covered a lot, Bob. We really have. But is there anything you think that we missed that we should hit?
I just think, the whole corporatization of both type of, arrangements, both of the DPC side and the concierge side,
Yeah.
uh, for better for worse. I mean, private equity is all over these arrangements,
Hmm.
and so if you're a physician thinking about, gee, I want to get away from the corporatization, you may not be as fast as you think. So, I mean, the biggest, concierge plan is MDVIP,
Yeah, I
and
know them. Yeah.
that's national, and that's owned by, a venture capital, which is owned by or controlled by, or Goldman Sachs has a, interest in it.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so the big players are, the big PE groups and investment banks are, seeing this as a great opportunity. You got to think about it. I mean, it's sort of like Netflix on steroids.
Hmm.
Particularly if you get the on the DPC side, if you get some of these big employers matching up with the direct primary care physicians,
Hmm.
that's pretty predictable income cash flow.
Hmm.
So, again, the private equity groups, investment banking groups will be over those type of folks to, sort of
Yeah.
enjoying them. And again, so, I mean, that may be great news for some physicians down the road, but, as we've seen with private equity, there's, it's not exactly what you think upfront will be what it will be like in 3 to 5 years. So, um,
And here's the magic thing that you will hear if you do it, because I've been told this for um, just about everybody who knows anybody who's sold to private equity in any medical discipline, dental discipline, you name it. Not too long, 6 months, I don't know, after the doctor sells, and then they're working in it. And now they're because they've got to work for a while, or typically some of their total sale package is tied to them staying for a while. And listen, if you're a DPC doctor, you're going to be asked to do this because the patients know you. And if you walk away on day one, the buyer's going to say, well, a lot of your patients are going to walk away, therefore it's not worth buying. You must stay. And then what you're going to hear eventually, if past is prologue, is you're not making your numbers, Dr. X. You're not seeing enough patients. And you're going to look at that and go, I receive everybody who comes. What do you mean? And guess what? You're going to be on the losing end of that conversation, even though it sounds totally preposterous. So please be very careful. I've heard just manipulative horror stories. I don't know how else to say it. And, patient care is like way down the list in conversations like that. So yeah, get ready.
Right. And if you think you might be able to see only, let's say 200 patients in your panel size, you might have all of a sudden someone looking over your shoulder. Well, you got to move that 200 to 400.
Yeah. And you got to go
Uh,
figure it out. Well, go
you got
find
to
them
go
for
figure
me. Yeah, I don't think so. That's your job. What do you mean that's my
Yeah.
job?
So,
It's and you signed it. When you signed that thick stack of, purchase documents and sale, you signed it. You did. So trust me, they know this. This they know. They don't know patient care, but they know this. So very good point. Um, the last question is, the context is we've caught a listener's attention, hopefully many, and they're thinking, you know what, I've been on the fence about starting one or the other. I want to get moving, but they're paralyzed. They just don't know where to start. It's a big topic. What's one or two super simple things you'd recommend they do, Bob, if they said, how do I, realist just get off the starting line and go down the path to opening up one of these?
Well, again, we talked about this a little bit. You got to do your homework. You got to do your SWOT analysis. See if it makes sense. If you want to go into either one, just is the market big enough?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to do your homework there.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I would say is you got to you know, figure out the
Mm-hmm.
financial impact. I mean, how many patients do you need at what cost?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a monthly fee or annual retainer, and you just have to, figure out that it's going to take time to get to that panel size to make
Mm-hmm.
it a justifiable livelihood for you. And you just have to be patient. But, you know, we're more than happy to help you go through that analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And, from both the marketing perspective and from the financial perspective.
Mm-hmm. Very good. I'll add one. After you've done that, or while you're doing that, take a look at your like employment contract. Um, and find the non-solicitation language and the non-compete language if they're there, because ideally, if you can open up, nearby where you currently practice and some of your patients can follow you, that's a hell of a great start. But if you're not able to compete, like you have to be a certain distance away from where you work now, or you can't, non-solicitation means you're not able to tell your patients. I mean, it depends on what the exact language is, that you're leaving, you're moving, so that they can decide, or there's terms and conditions about what you can do and when you can do it. Find out what those are, because there's usually something there. And what a shame it would be is if you opened up and then you want to tell them, you're like, oh my God, I can't tell them for 2 years. I'm going to get sued, and they will sue you. So,
Right.
and that was a big part of your plan, right? So the ability to tell your current patient population, big deal, what you can say and when you can say it, and competitive, radius versus where you work now.
Right. And I think, another component of that, I mean, obviously you need to understand your contract, but um, when you do your pro forma, are you going to need, mid levels to help you?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that could be a positive, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe also you got to think about, who are the mid levels that will best suit this, new venture I'm about to go forward
Right.
with.
Right. Very good.
So,
Very good, Bob. Thank you. Thank you for coming on, for
thank you, Carl.
putting more depth to this, I think, than at least what I've heard before. So I really appreciate it.
It's a fascinating subject.
Yes, and
Yeah.
growing and evolving, to be sure. A couple
Glad
of
it did.
points. Yes, a couple of points before we wrap up. First, if you're like Bob or us, you serve private practice owners or you're one yourself. You've got some experience or expertise on the business side of private practice. And don't overthink what that is. Something you think is boring and who would care. I promise you, others are struggling with it. So whatever it is, in the show notes to every episode, there's a link, a couple of clicks. Tell us what you're thinking about, and we'll get you scheduled as soon as possible. And finally, please subscribe to Practice Care. One word, we're easy to find. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube. Every player finds us super easy. If you subscribe, though, then you can stay up to date very easily on all of our new episodes, one new one a week. Thanks very much, and until next time.